Hi there, MenoMe community. How are you? It's Jennifer here from Team MenoMe, and I'm terribly excited today to have David Giles here, who is the head honcho from Enzo that supply Enzogenol, which is what we use in 55 plus. I hope you can see that okay. Sometimes the bottle doesn't hold up nice and straight for me. So there is incredible science behind Enzogenol, and I'm very excited to pick David's brains about that, because like us, Enzo as a company are very much into scientifically based evidence behind their products. So welcome, David. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer, and good morning to everybody in the MenoMe community.
It's very excited. I'm just going to have you talking the whole time, I think. So, so can you tell us a little bit about Enzogenol? You've got that beautiful backdrop there, which is related to what we're going to talk about, isn't it?
That's right. So that backdrop is a typical scene you might find in a central North Island pine forest. In fact, I took that photo myself.
Oh, really?
So those trees are probably about 15 to 20 years old. When they get to 25 years old, they get harvested for timber. And that's when we're able to collect the bark off them, and we bring that bark to our factory in the Waikato, and we process the bark, and at the other end of the process, out comes Enzogenol.
That's amazing. Now, the Waikato, for those that don't know, is in the North Island of New Zealand. It's about middle of the North Island, isn't it, David?
Yes, it's absolute prime countryside for growing pine trees. We've got the fastest growing pine forests in the world, and it's a very pristine environment. If you're actually in a forest like that, it's very quiet and very still, very cool and quite calming. You know, it'd be a good place to meditate if you're into that.
Nature bathing.
Yes, yeah, that's a good phrase for it. Yes, yeah.
And the process you use for extracting the Enzogenol, that's very eco-friendly and natural too, isn't it? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, it is. So the environmental protection is very precious to us. So if we start with, say, the trees, the forests here are growing in accordance with Forestry Stewardship Council principles. Which is means the trees are growing sustainably. The health of the rivers and the creeks and the forests are monitored. Special habitats are set aside, and sort of indigenous communities are all looked after as part of that forest growing operation. And we also bring those same principles into our production. We only use pure water in our process, so that's something that differentiates us from the other pine bark extracts from Europe, is they have to use solvents, but we have developed a proprietary water-only extraction process. And so we take town supply water, and then we purify it. We run it through carbon filters, and then we also de-ionize the water. And then only at that point is the water good enough to be used in our production process. And the bark we get is also all hand sorted. It's got to be pure Pinus radiata, which is really only the only species besides Douglas fir that is commercially grown here. But it also has to be really fresh. We try to get it before you know, any composting action has taken place. So it comes in fresh from a debarking unit, which is often located in the forest. It's brought in a truck to our factory, so it's as fresh as we can possibly get it. and then we start running it through our production process. The other thing in our process, we really try to minimize the amount of oxygen that gets into the process. So as you know, once you start applying any kind of industrial process, it kind of changes the compounds slightly. If you think about say instant coffee versus freshly ground coffee, so instant coffee is the best that technology can come up with, but it still does not taste as good as freshly ground coffee, right? And it's the same with any kind of natural process or product you're trying to make. You have to try and keep the processing steps to a minimum, stop the ingress of oxygen, and try and minimize the amount of heating that takes place. So we've developed our own process that minimizes all of those things together with pure water and really, really fresh, pristine bark. And so we've got a pine bark extract that's as pure and as natural as you can possibly get. There's nothing else comes close, really, as far as we're concerned. And yes, we do like to skite about that. Yeah.
That's incredible. What a wonderful
Yeah.
process. What a wonderful thing to do. We're very lucky to be able to have that in our product.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for that.
one of the reasons that we love Enzogenol is that it's a very potent antioxidant, isn't it? And I'm going to have a go at saying this word because I never say it correctly. But could you please explain to us proanthocyanidins?
Okay, yeah.
How did I do?
No, perfect, actually. Yeah. There's actually quite a few different scientific terms for the compounds, but I prefer to use proanthocyanidins because, believe it or not, that's the easiest one to pronounce. So these compounds are found ubiquitously in nature. They're in the bark of trees, they're in leaves, they're present in seeds. If you drink red wine, they're present in red wine, in tea. And what they do is they have a protective effect in the plant. So they're called what's known as secondary plant metabolites, and plants make them because they have all of their protective qualities. So they protect against UV, both UVA and UVB. So they're really, really good in cosmetic products. They protect against pathogens, so parasites, bacteria, viral attacks on the tree. They protect the tree against extreme temperature extremes, so freezing cold, and in the summer, the high UV from drought. And because they're antioxidants, they're slightly resistant to combustion as well, so they can provide some protection against fire. In fact, some of the very, very large conifers, like this giant sequoias, they have bark that's, maybe, that thick, and they can survive some forest fires up to a point.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah. So these compounds have all these protective qualities, and lo and behold, when you give them to a mammal, like a human, they say provide similar protective qualities in people.
Wow.
So yeah, they're quite, they're miraculous, really. We can't synthetically create them. Nature has made these, compounds over, thousands of years of evolution, I guess. And pine trees are the longest living species on the planet. Pinus longivata, which is up in the Sierra Nevadas in California, is the longest living species. They live, typical pine trees there live for 5,000 years.
Oh my goodness.
And when we analyze the bark in the pine trees compared to other types of trees, they have very, very high quantities of proanthocyanidins. However, proanthocyanidins are not the only compounds. There's also flavonoids, which are lower molecular weight. So we have taxipholin, which is found in, say, onions and apples, quercetin, and a very interesting compound called piceatanol, which is like resveratrol, which you may have heard of. Yeah, but it's considerably more powerful. So Enzogenol is actually a spectrum of different compounds. There's about 5 compounds that comprise the main bulk of Enzogenol. But proanthocyanidins are the main compound. About 80% of Enzogenol is proanthocyanidins. Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
Now the proanthocyanidins are powerhouses. Isn't Mother Nature, like, she's just superwoman, isn't she? Judging from what you're talking about here, it's quite incredible. But
yeah.
I know that you run a lot of clinical trials to test the efficacy in different areas of Enzogenol. And you were just telling me, if you don't mind repeating yourself, your ethos on that. And just coming into some of this data for, I'm just reading from my notes because I don't want to miss anything, like for the heart, for the brain, for the eyes, for aging and telomeres, which I talk about sometimes. They're like little shoelaces, and they do equate, the ends of shoelaces, they do equate to how we age. And the most recent ones that I've found, headaches and migraines, which affect a lot of you ladies, arthritis, skin, incredible for skin, and something that is a huge one, which is weight gain, which is to do with your blood sugars and spiking blood sugar levels, which I talk about a lot. And you have got some very exciting data on blood sugar as well, haven't you? So
where should I start?
It's amazing.
The benefits are systemic, and that's because Enzogenol is an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. So it does benefit your body right down to the tips of your toes, to your brain and eyes, to your skin. If I go back to our very first bit of science, it was carried out by Canterbury University. They did a length of life studies on mice. So they took groups of mice and they gave them a control diet, and in the other group was the control diet plus Enzogenol. And they demonstrated in those studies that Enzogenol has a life-extending effect in mice. They lived about 20% longer than the control group. They had a lower rate of cancer. They were more, as they got older, they had more mobility. There's little or no arthritis. Their fur looked really, really good compared to the control group, where it was all, haggard and falling out. And they didn't get dementia. So the control group, once they got very old, they were basically aimlessly hobbling around, quite fearful, full of anxiety, whereas the group of mice taking Enzogenol were still running around on their wheels and hanging off pencils and balancing. So they had much better neuromuscular performance, and still exploring their world, right up to their, final days. So, that's what got us really interested in the properties of Enzogenol. And so we moved on to human studies, and we've in recent years, the last 10 years or so, we've focused on brain health. So we've got 4 clinical studies published. The first study was on middle-aged men, Australian men, a bit overweight, and we found after 5 weeks of supplementation, they had much better working memory performance. And then we've done 2 studies on brain injury. These have both been published, and in both studies, we noted improvements to brain function. One study showed improvements in everyday cognitive failures. So if you've had a brain injury or highly stressed, you start to make just everyday cognitive failures. You've got so much going in your mind that you forget the keys, or forget where you're going, or walk into a room and then realize, what did I come into this room for? Or you can't even read a paragraph without having to go back over it. And so we were able to demonstrate a significant improvement in those group of people who are experiencing high rates of everyday cognitive failures. And then we did a second study on college-age athletes who have suffered concussion. And in that study, we picked up much better sleeping patterns. So they had less fatigue, and mental fatigue, we're talking, not physical fatigue, and improved sleep. And then we've done a migraine study. So a lot of our research has been driven from customer feedback. So we were getting a lot of feedback saying, hey, my migraines are better. So we did a study at Kaiser Permanente Hospital in Anaheim. There was a neurologist there who treats basket cases. I'm sure there's a medical word for it, but these are people who have high rates, 15 plus migraines per month, and they're disabled, neurologically disabled from their migraines. Okay.
Yes.
And they're also resistant to pharmacological intervention. So that, in other words, they've tried everything. That's why they've been sent to this neurologist. And so he used our product in high doses, about 1 gram or per day. And we got what we found in that study was a very good response rate. About 60% of the patients were responders. The other 40%, not really. We don't know why they didn't respond. That's just, they don't respond to anything, not even drugs. But for the other 60%, there was a complete remission. So yeah, these people went from being disabled, stuck in bed for days and days, not able to get work done around the house, not employed, to, the migraines disappeared, and they're able to get back and, lead normal lives. So, that's a fantastic, outcome for them. And that's all through the nutritional power of the proanthocyanidins. It's reducing inflammation, improving blood supply to the brain, improving the neural connections, cognitive function, and just making the rest of their body work better as well.
That's life-changing stuff, isn't it?
For those individuals, yeah. Oh, wow, it was huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's so impressive.
Yeah. However, unless we go down the actual drug development path, then you're not allowed to advertise it. Basically, we have the scientific publication. And people can Google that. You can go onto Google Scholar, type in our brand name, and you'll find all of our studies. So that's in the brain health area. And now we're working in the blood sugar area. And
so excited about that.
Yeah, well, that's a big area, especially for menopause, isn't it? So yes. You're probably aware that once estrogen levels drop, your blood sugar control becomes so much more difficult, because you effectively become more insulin resistant.
Yes.
Yeah, and
1 in 2 women.
is that right? Yeah, yeah. So, and then you start getting the weight gain around the waist, abdominal fat, which is the dangerous type. And so it's really important to control blood sugar around that time of your life. It's actually important at any time in your life, really.
Yes.
But when you're going through all those changes, and many mood changes are also caused by blood sugar.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily high blood sugar levels. It's the what's called the glycemic variation, the ups and downs going from hyper to hypo, and that's really, really bad for your health. You know, it's all your arterial health, your blood vessels get stiffer and lose their elasticity. You get brain fog. You wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning and can't get back to sleep, probably because of low blood sugar. And yeah, it's a real problem. Also, your skin, high blood sugar damages your skin. It binds with collagen, and you can get what's called advanced glycation end products actually in your skin, and well, actually all through your body, but they really cause and accelerate the aging process. And especially if if you combine it with UV, you're aging from the inside through these glycation end products, but you can also age on the outside externally through high UV, and the UV can actually make those AGEs even worse. So you can get pigmentation in the skin and loss of elasticity. So it's all about controlling blood sugar, to my mind.
I know, and I think a lot of people don't realize that for women pre-peri menopause and post-menopause, you've got particularly in the peri stage, you've got your fluctuating estrogen, then you've got your blood sugar going like it as well. So it's no wonder it creates a perfect storm for some of the signs. So it just makes Enzogenol an amazing ingredient to help, doesn't it?
Yeah, it controls the insulin as well. So if high insulin inhibits lipolysis, so it means that you're not burning fat, and it's going on around your midriff, basically. So you're trying to keep the blood sugar under control and have low insulin levels as well. So that's what our first study has found, that Enzogenol helps with both. It also inhibits the digestive enzymes, which are called alpha amylase and alpha glycosidase, and another one called DPP4, which is involved with that slows down gastric emptying. So Enzogenol can slow down the rate of digestion, so you need to have it before a meal, and that's what's really helping to control the rise in blood sugar. And this doesn't matter if you're non-diabetic. If you're a healthy person, you can still benefit from improved glucose clearance in your blood. And our clinical study that we've just published last year, that was done at Massey University, that showed that it was done on healthy people, showed that Enzogenol is really, really good for clearing out the glucose out of your blood and keeping insulin levels down at the same time. So there's less stress on your pancreas. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a wonderful thing. Are you going to do more studies on that?
Yes, because the study we've done is basically just giving people a high dose of glucose, We now also need to do the similar studies with sucrose and real meals, like, you know, potatoes, give them a meal of potatoes. But we also want to look at other things, such as can Enzogenol prevent dangerous compounds getting into your blood from your digestive system. So another common problem is gut permeability, where it becomes a bit more permeable and we're letting a little more junk into our bodies. So future studies are going to focus on those areas as well. So blood sugar, gut permeability, gut health in general. Yeah, so
watch this space.
Yeah. But it's quite hard to get studies done during COVID. So everything's taking longer, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. It's just quite incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, they're amazing compounds, really, and but at the same time, it shouldn't surprise us that what works for a plant should also work for a human, because we do share a lot of the DNA of plants, and we've coexisted together for tens of thousands of years. So yeah, it is good. It's a very good industry to be in, Jennifer.
Yes,
we're adding value to the forests, and we're doing good things for the environment as well as people's health.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all wonderful. Yeah. I love the power of plants. I'm powered by plants.
Well, yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Stay there. I'll see you in one moment, but we just wanted to say we hope you really enjoyed that out there in our MenoMe community. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Just send them through on any of our emails. And I'll put some links to those trials below as well. Is that okay if I do that, David?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
They're
all in the public domain anyway.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Great.
You can go on Google Scholar and just look them up.
Okay, there you go, guys. So very, very exciting time for us all, but particularly for us in pre-peri menopause and post-menopause. I know that's a mouthful, but it encompasses all the different stages. So we'll talk to you again soon.